3 months after burying my husband, his parents looked me in the eye and said, "You're a burden. Get out." So I left with my kids and nothing else. What they never knew was that I had just won $200 million. And when they came crawling back, watch what I did. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. What I'm about to share with you is my story. A story of pain, rejection, and ultimately hope. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 35 years old. 3 months ago, I said goodbye to the love of my life. My husband, David, lost his battle with cancer. We were married for 11 beautiful years. He wasn't just my husband. He was my everything, my best friend, the father of our 2 precious babies, Lily and Noah. Watching him slip away in that hospital bed day after day broke me in ways I didn't think a person could break and still keep breathing. After we buried David, I had nowhere to go. We had been renting a small house in downtown Chicago, but it was in his name. Without his income, I couldn't afford to stay there. That's when David's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, offered to let me and the children move in with them. I thought it was kindness. I thought they cared. I was so wrong. At first, things seemed okay. They were quiet around me. A little distant, maybe. But I told myself they were grieving too. They had lost their son. I tried to stay out of their way. I kept the kids quiet. I cleaned up after us. I wanted to be grateful, not a burden. But the house always felt cold. Not just the temperature. The air itself felt heavy. Like I was walking on glass every single day. They barely looked at me when they spoke. Conversations were short and sharp. And I started to notice the whispers. The hushed voices that stopped when I entered a room. One night, about 2 weeks after we moved in, I came downstairs to get some water. My head was pounding from crying, and I just needed something to help me sleep. That's when I heard them, David's parents, talking about me in the kitchen. "She's still here," Mrs. Mitchell said, her voice tired and annoyed. "With those kids. How much longer is this going to go on?" "She's grieving, Margaret," Mr. Mitchell replied. "So are we, Robert. So are we. But this isn't a charity house. We can't keep feeding 3 extra mouths forever. She needs to leave and go back to her own family." I froze on the stairs. My heart stopped. Go back to my own family? I had no family. My parents had passed away years ago. David was my family. And now, his parents were talking about me like I was some kind of pest in their home. What exactly is she contributing? Mrs. Mitchell continued. "Nothing. She just sits around crying all day while we pay for everything." I couldn't breathe. I turned around and went back to my room as quietly as I could. I lay down next to my sleeping children and cried into my pillow until there were no tears left. The next morning, they called me into the living room. Lily was playing outside with Noah in the backyard. I sat down on their couch, my hands shaking. I already knew what was coming. "Sarah," Mr. Mitchell began, not looking at me. "We need to talk about your plans. You can't stay here forever. We think it's time you start figuring out your next steps." "Next steps?" I whispered. Mrs. Mitchell crossed her arms. "We have our own lives to live. It's been 3 weeks now. You need to move on. Move on." As if grief had a deadline. As if I could just pack up my dead husband's memory and walk away like nothing happened. "I don't have anywhere to go," I said, my voice barely audible. "That's not really our problem," Mrs. Mitchell said coldly. "We've done what we can. But we can't keep carrying this burden." Burden. That word cut through me like a knife. I looked over at the mantel, where a photo of David and me on our wedding day still sat. He was smiling in that picture. So was I. We looked so happy, so full of hope. And now, here I was being thrown out by his own parents. "I understand," I said quietly, standing up. My legs felt weak, but I held myself together. "I'll leave tomorrow." That night, I packed our lives into 2 small suitcases. Lily kept asking me why we had to leave. I told her we were going on a little trip. She smiled, excited. She didn't understand. Noah was only 3. He just held onto his stuffed bear and watched me with wide, innocent eyes. The next morning, we walked out of that house. I held Lily's hand. Noah was asleep on my shoulder. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the street ahead of me, and I felt completely lost. No job. No money. No home. Just me and 2 children who depended on me for everything. I started walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop. Every step felt like dragging a mountain behind me. My back ached. My heart ached. But I kept moving forward because my children needed me to. Lily looked up at me and said, Mommy, where are we going? I smiled through the pain and said, somewhere better, sweetheart. Somewhere better. But honestly, I had no idea if that was true. We walked for over an hour. My arms were burning from carrying Noah. The suitcase wheels kept catching on cracks in the sidewalk. Lily was tired, but she didn't complain. She just held my hand and kept walking beside me like the brave little girl she is. I only had one place I could think of. My old friend, Jessica. We had been close years ago, but life got busy. We lost touch. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. But I was desperate. So I went to her apartment in the north side of the city and knocked on her door like a beggar. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with 2 kids and a suitcase, her face just melted. She didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug and said, "Come in. You're safe now." I broke down right there. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Jessica let us stay in her tiny 1-bedroom apartment. She set up a mattress in her living room for me and the kids. It wasn't much, but it felt like a palace compared to the coldness of the Mitchell house. That first night, I fed my kids cereal and toast. They ate like it was a feast. Then I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and cried until I had nothing left inside me. The next day, I started looking for work. Any work. I asked around at grocery stores, diners, laundromats. Most places weren't hiring. A few said they'd call me back. They never did. I started cleaning houses for cash. An older couple hired me to come in twice a week. The work was hard, but I didn't care. I needed the money. I also started selling bottled water and snacks near the train station in the mornings before my cleaning jobs. People looked at me with pity. Some ignored me completely. One man in a suit stopped and asked, "Why is a young woman like you out here selling water?" I just smiled and said, "Life happens fast, sir." Most days, I made about $10 or $15. Some days, nothing at all. I would come back to Jessica's apartment exhausted, my hands rough and sore. But I couldn't complain. My kids needed to eat. And Jessica was already doing so much for us. At night, I would lie on that mattress with Lily on one side and Noah on the other. Sometimes I would reach out in the dark just to feel them breathing. Just to remind myself that I still had something worth fighting for. We barely had one real meal a day. Jessica would share whatever she had, but I could see her struggling too. So I started lying to my kids. I'd tell them I already ate at work. The truth was, my stomach was empty and aching. But their little bellies mattered more than mine. Weeks passed like this. Then a month. Lily started asking why we didn't have our own house anymore. I told her we were just in between places. She didn't push. But I could see the confusion in her eyes. Noah clung to me more than ever. He wouldn't let me out of his sight. If I went to the bathroom, he'd cry at the door. It broke my heart. One evening, I was organizing my bag looking for a pen. My hand brushed against something crumpled in the side pocket. I pulled it out. It was a lottery ticket, old and faded. I stared at it, confused at first. Then I remembered. David had bought it. It was months ago, back when he was still strong enough to walk. We had gone to the pharmacy to pick up his medication, and he saw the lottery machine. He smiled at me, that beautiful smile I missed so much, and said, "Let's try our luck. Maybe we'll win and take the kids to Disney World." He handed me the ticket that night and said, "You keep this. It's probably nothing, but just in case." I had stuffed it in my bag and forgotten about it completely. Now, holding it in my hands, I felt something strange. A tiny whisper inside me that said, "Check it." That night, after the kids fell asleep, I borrowed Jessica's phone. My hands were shaking as I searched for the lottery results. I found the drawing date. I typed in the numbers, one by one, and then I froze. All 6 numbers matched. I blinked. I refreshed the page. I checked again. And again. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The jackpot was $200 million. I sat there in complete silence, staring at the screen. The room around me seemed to disappear. I looked down at that crumpled piece of paper in my hand and whispered, "Oh my God!" The woman who couldn't afford a loaf of bread had just won $200 million. The widow they called a burden was now one of the richest people in the country. I didn't sleep that night. I must have checked those numbers 100 times. I kept thinking I was dreaming, that I'd wake up and it would all be gone. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. The next morning, I called the lottery office. The man on the phone confirmed it. The ticket was real. The prize was real. He told me they'd schedule a meeting to verify everything and help me claim the money. When I hung up, Jessica walked into the room. She saw me sitting there, ticket in hand, tears streaming down my face. "Sarah, what's wrong?" she asked. I turned to her and whispered, "I just won $200 million." She dropped her coffee mug. The next few days felt like I was floating through a dream. I met with lawyers, financial advisors, people who spoke in terms I barely understood, but who promised to help me do this the right way. They advised me to claim the winnings anonymously, to keep my name out of the news. I agreed immediately. I didn't want attention. I just wanted safety, peace, a chance to breathe. When the money finally hit my account, I sat in Jessica's living room staring at the number on the screen. It didn't feel real. How could it? Just weeks ago, I was selling water on a street corner, praying I'd make enough for dinner. Now, I had more money than I could ever spend in a lifetime. The first thing I did was find us a home. Not a mansion, not some flashy penthouse, just a warm, beautiful 3-bedroom house near Lake Michigan. It had big windows that let in the sunlight, a backyard where the kids could play, a porch where I could sit and watch the water. The day we moved in, Lily ran through every room screaming with joy. Noah toddled after her, laughing. I stood in the kitchen and cried. But this time they were tears of relief, of gratitude. We were finally home. I took the kids shopping. I bought them new clothes, new toys. I filled the pantry with food. All the things I used to have to say no to. Fresh fruit, yogurt, snacks, real meals. When I swiped my card for the first time and didn't have to check the balance, I cried in the middle of the grocery store. But I didn't just spend the money on us. I couldn't. Not after everything I'd been through. I knew what it felt like to be desperate, to be invisible, to be thrown away like trash. So I decided to do something about it. With the help of my legal team, I started a foundation called New Beginnings. It was a program designed to help widows and single mothers who had nowhere to turn. We provided temporary housing, job training, legal support, and counseling. Everything I wish I had when I was at my lowest. I personally met with every woman who came through our doors. I sat with them. I listened to their stories. Some cried. Some were too broken to speak. I understood all of it, because I had been there. Jessica came on board to help me run the foundation. She was amazing. Organized, compassionate, dedicated. One day, as we were sorting through donations, she looked at me and said, "You know, you didn't just change your life. You changed mine too." I smiled at her. "You saved me when no one else would. This is the least I can do." Life felt peaceful. My kids were happy. Lily started at a wonderful school where she made friends and came home every day with stories and drawings. Noah was in a daycare he loved, and I finally felt like I could breathe. But of course, peace never lasts long. About a month after we moved into the house, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to check the voicemail. It was Mrs. Mitchell. "Hi, Sarah. It's Margaret. We heard some things. Just wanted to check in on you and the kids. We've been thinking about you. We miss them so much. Call us back." I stared at the phone in disbelief. They kicked me out. They called me a burden. And now, suddenly, they missed us? Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. Mr. Mitchell, David's sister, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone suddenly remembered I existed. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the window and my stomach dropped. It was them, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, standing on my porch with flowers in hand and fake smiles on their faces. I opened the door halfway. "Sarah," Mr. Mitchell said warmly. "It's so good to see you. We've been trying to reach you." "I know," I said flatly. Mrs. Mitchell held out the flowers. "We heard about your good fortune. We're so happy for you. We wanted to apologize. We were grieving and we said things we didn't mean." I looked at the flowers but didn't take them. "You called me a burden," I said quietly. "You threw me and your grandchildren out onto the street with nowhere to go." "We were wrong," Mr. Mitchell said quickly. "We weren't thinking clearly. We want to make things right. We want to be in the kids' lives again." I let the silence sit between us, long and heavy. Then I spoke. "You didn't want us when we had nothing. You won't benefit now that we have everything." Mrs. Mitchell's face changed. "Sarah, we're family." "No," I said firmly. "You were family. Now you're just strangers who showed me exactly who you are when it mattered most. Don't punish the children by keeping them from their grandparents," Mr. Mitchell said, his voice rising. I shook my head. "This isn't punishment. This is protection. My kids are finally happy, finally safe, and I won't let anyone take that away from them. Not even you." Mrs. Mitchell's face turned red. "So that's it? You think you're better than us now because you have money. No, I said calmly. I think I finally understand my worth. And it has nothing to do with money. I stepped back and closed the door. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with strength, with certainty. I walked over to the couch, sat down, and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt completely free. After I closed the door on the Mitchells, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just clear. Clear about who I was. Clear about what I wanted. And crystal clear about who I would never allow back into my life. That evening, I tucked Lily into bed. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes and asked, "Mommy, are we going to stay here forever?" I brushed her hair back gently and smiled. "We're going to stay wherever we feel safe, loved, and happy." She grinned. "Then I want to stay here forever." "Me too, baby. Me too." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Every morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows. I made breakfast for my kids. Real breakfast. Pancakes. Eggs. Fresh fruit. Things I used to dream about being able to afford. Now it was just our normal. I enrolled Lily in piano lessons. She loved it. Every week, she'd come home and play me the new songs she learned. Noah started preschool, and he made a best friend named Tyler. Watching them play together in the backyard, laughing and running, filled my heart in ways I can't even describe. But even with all the comfort, I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot what it felt like to beg for help, to sleep on someone's floor, to go to bed hungry so my kids could eat. That's why I poured myself into new beginnings. The foundation grew quickly. We opened a second location in Detroit, then a third in Milwaukee. Each center offered the same services: temporary housing, job training, legal aid, and most importantly, hope. I didn't just fund it from a distance. I was there. I showed up. I met with the women. I sat in on the support groups. I listened to their stories, and I shared mine. Not because I wanted sympathy, but because I wanted them to know that they weren't alone. That someone understood. One woman, named Rachel, reminded me so much of myself. Her husband had died in a construction accident, and her in-laws took her baby and kicked her out. She fought for months to get him back. When she finally did, she came to new beginnings with nothing but a diaper bag and a broken heart. Today, Rachel runs our Detroit location. She's strong, confident, and full of life. Watching her transformation was one of the greatest gifts of my life. I also set up trust funds for Lily and Noah. No matter what happens to me, they'll be taken care of. Their education is secured. Their futures are bright. And they'll never have to worry about being called a burden by anyone. But I didn't stop there. I donated to women's shelters across the Midwest. I funded scholarships for single mothers going back to school. I even started a program that provided free childcare for women trying to get back into the workforce. Money, I realized, wasn't just about comfort. It was about power. The power to change lives. The power to give people a second chance. And I was determined to use that power well. Jessica often joked that I worked too hard. "You're a millionaire, Sarah. You're supposed to be on a beach somewhere sipping cocktails." I laughed. Maybe one day. But right now, this is where I need to be. Because the truth was, helping others healed me too. Every woman I helped stand back up reminded me of my own strength. Every child I saw smile reminded me why I fought so hard to survive. One evening, I received an email from a young woman in Indiana. She had heard about New Beginnings and wanted to know how she could get involved. Her name was Emily, and she had recently lost her husband to cancer. She had 2 kids and no support system. I wrote her back immediately. "Let's talk." We spoke on the phone for over an hour. I told her my story. She told me hers. By the end of the call, we were both crying. But they were good tears. Healing tears. "You give me hope," she said softly. "Thank you. You're going to be okay," I told her. "I promise." And I meant it. Because if I could rise from the ashes, so could she. So could anyone. Around this time, Lily asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. We were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, and she turned to me and said, "Mom, if we hadn't won that money, what would have happened to us?" I looked at her, this beautiful, brave little girl who had been through so much, and I answered honestly, "I don't know, sweetheart. But I do know we would have kept going. Because we're stronger than we think." She nodded slowly, like she understood. "I'm glad we kept going." "Me too, Lily. Me too." Later that night, after the kids went to bed, I stood in the kitchen with a cup of tea and looked around. At the home we built. At the life we created. at the peace we finally found. I thought about David. I thought about the lottery ticket he bought on a whim. I thought about how, even in death, he was still taking care of us. Thank you, I whispered into the quiet. Thank you for everything. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I had my children. I had my purpose. And I had hope. And sometimes that's all you need. As the months passed, life continued to unfold in ways I never imagined. New Beginnings expanded into 5 cities. We helped over 300 women and their children find stability, dignity, and hope. I received letters every week from women thanking me, telling me how the program changed their lives. Each one made me cry. Each one reminded me why I started this in the first place. But even with all the success, I stayed grounded. I didn't move into a mansion. I didn't buy fancy cars or designer clothes. I lived simply, comfortably. My kids had everything they needed, but I made sure they understood the value of kindness, gratitude, and hard work. Lily, now 8 years old, started volunteering with me at the foundation. She'd help pack care packages for new families. She'd play with the younger kids while their mothers attended job training sessions. Watching her show compassion to others filled me with so much pride. Noah, now 5, was full of energy and curiosity. He wanted to be a chef, he said. Every Saturday morning, he'd insist on making scrambled eggs. Most of it ended up on the counter, but I didn't care. His laughter filled the house, and that was worth more than anything money could buy. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I received an unexpected visit. I was in the garden with the kids when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a young woman standing there, nervous and teary-eyed. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" she asked. "I am," I said gently. "My name is Emma. I came through your program in Detroit a year ago. I just wanted to say thank you. I wouldn't be here without you." She told me her story, how she had been living in her car with her daughter after her husband left them, how she found new beginnings and slowly rebuilt her life. She now had a job, an apartment, and her daughter was thriving in school. "I just wanted you to see that your work matters," she said, her voice breaking. "You saved us." I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a hand to hold." After she left, I sat on the porch and let the weight of that moment wash over me. This was why I survived. This was why I kept going. Not for the money, not for revenge, but for this, for moments like these. A few weeks later, I received another call from the Mitchells. This time I answered. "Sarah," Mrs. Mitchell's voice was cold. "We've tried to be kind. We've tried to apologize. But you've made it clear you don't care about family." "You're right," I said calmly. "I don't care about people who only show up when there's something to gain." "We're taking you to court," she said sharply. "For grandparents' rights." I took a deep breath. "You can try, but you threw us out. You called us burdens. I have witnesses. I have evidence. And most importantly, I have the resources to fight you every step of the way. So if you want to go to court, go ahead. But you won't win." There was silence on the other end. Then she hung up. I never heard from them again. That evening, I sat with Jessica over coffee. She looked at me and said, "You've come so far, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. "You believed in me when no one else did." "You believed in yourself," she replied. "That's what mattered most." She was right. Somewhere along the way, I had found myself again. Not the broken widow who was thrown out onto the street. Not the desperate mother selling water on a corner. But a woman who knew her worth. A woman who built a life from nothing. A woman who turned pain into purpose. One evening, as I tucked Lily and Noah into bed, Lily looked up at me and said, "Mom, do you still miss Dad?" I felt my throat tighten. "Every single day, sweetheart." "Do you think he's proud of us?" she asked. I smiled through the tears. "I know he is. He's watching over us. And I think he's smiling." She hugged me tightly. "I think so too." After they fell asleep, I walked out onto the porch and looked up at the stars. The night was clear and calm. I thought about David, about the ticket he bought, about the love he gave me, about the strength he didn't even know he left behind. "I did it," I whispered to the sky. "I kept them safe. I kept going. I hope you're proud." The wind picked up gently, and for a moment, I swore I felt him there. Not in a sad way, in a peaceful way. Like he was saying, "You did good." As I stood there under the stars, I realized something powerful. My story wasn't just about winning the lottery. It was about resilience, about refusing to give up even when the world told me I was nothing. It was about turning rejection into strength and pain into purpose. I didn't need the Mitchells' approval. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had something far more valuable. I had my children. I had my peace. And I had a life full of meaning. So if you're out there right now struggling, feeling invisible, feeling like you'll never make it, hear me when I say this. You are stronger than you know. Your breakthrough is coming. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But it's coming. And when it does, you'll look back and realize that every hard step was worth it. Don't give up. Keep moving forward. Even if it's just one step at a time. Because you never know what's waiting for you just around the corner. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you hope. I hope it reminded you that you matter. And I hope it showed you that no matter how dark life gets, there's always light waiting on the other side. Stay strong. Stay hopeful. And remember, your story isn't over yet. Until next time, take care of yourself. And never forget your worth. Goodbye and God bless.